major religions, there are talks about spiritual beings, spiritual entities. Entities for sure, right? We have these entities that people try to get cleaned off of them. I'm also reminded of Scientology, where there is a lot of emphasis on these things called thetans that are attached to the human body. And, you can make fun of which many people are, and and to some degree, maybe rightfully so even, of Scientology. But to tell you the truth, their way of thinking about spirituality, or some of the spiritual elements within that cult or religion, whatever you want to call it, it's very similar to many of the maybe, to some degree, the quote unquote normal religions, but also New Age spirituality. And one of those things are these thetans, and who are attached to the body, and you want to get those off. We can even see, there are instances of healing people from demons and things like that in the Bible, and we have the same things in all the Abrahamic religions, of course, and there are beings and subtle beings in all the major religions like Buddhism and different types of Hinduism. So we see it everywhere, and some of them are just like the normal physical world. There are some good people there, and there are some bad people there, and you want to associate with the good ones and not with the bad ones. I remember reading a text called there are these, we have a lot of it. I'm sorry for being a bit off the cusp here, but there's a lot to it. Even things called aliens can, and I think Jacques Villay, one of these most famous, what do you call, alien UFO researchers, seem, at least to me, think about aliens or UFOs even in light of interdimensional beings, basically. So beings that reside not in the physical world, maybe, which is maybe the reason why it is so hard to capture them or see them at all, why we can't measure them, and why, at least I would say, in the Western world, in the public sphere, most intellectuals, at least, seem to think that they simply don't exist. Aliens, as well as maybe UFOs is starting to turn a bit, since that article in the New York Times or New York Post in 2017, which said that there are unidentified flying objects. They are real. They actually exist. It doesn't say anything about interdimensional beings, of course, or subtle beings or anything like that. But the fact that there are, what you call nowadays apparently UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, so not necessarily flying objects. So that could also feed into, I guess, in a sense, this idea of having interdimensional beings there. So they just appear. They may not even be in our time-space continuum. Just as most beings in the subtle realm, this is like one of the big conundrums with spirituality, I think. Maybe not a conundrum, but there are a lot of people noticing these things. Not just, I mean, to some extent we have, but it's hard. It's hard. I was going to say we have physical evidence of some UAPs or UFOs. physical in terms of being able to measure it to some extent. But I mean, I remember Joe Rogan is one of the great proponents of UFOs, and he's really interested and he's really into it. And he has been on, I think he did a miniseries in which he went to people who said or claimed they had the new, about UFOs, and they had evidence for it. And he went to them and he said, show me the evidence. And I think this is maybe the biggest argument against UFOs, UAPs, aliens, things like that, is the lack of evidence. It's just so sparse. Depending on how you view it, of course, I imagine you can make an argument for there being a lot of evidence too, at least in terms of people seeing it. So you can definitely, if it was a trial, is did someone do this, and you go on what people say. If we have a lot of witnesses seeing the same thing and saying the same thing, you kind of by the, what's it called the preponderance of the evidence. So we have a sort of preponderance of the evidence with regards to aliens, in that so many people see it, and we have also some ways that we've been able to measure it or see it, and we have these uh, pilots seeing them, and different military people speaking out, and and there's definitely people within the different governments throughout the world who has looked into it to some extent, and yet we don't, it's hard to say why exactly. Is it a conspiracy or something else? But where we don't have any what we call hard evidence, give me a physical specimen, or many claim, of course, that there are, physical specimens, as physical evidence, but nothing is in the public sphere, as far as I know, anyway. There are these photos, which, back in the day, maybe photos would point to something, even though they are kind of blurry, and, why don't, I mean, this is a good argument, I think, against it. Why aren't there any good photos of anything? There are a lot of photos that are showing basically nothing. I mean, I'm a bit hyperbolic here, maybe, but if we, blurry images that it doesn't even, it might convince some people, but it's, I wouldn't bet any money on it looking at many of these photos. It doesn't mean, though, that it isn't true. It seems very plausible that there may be, it very well may be true. At least it is definitely true that a lot of people have witnessed things like that. The actual ontology of it, though, is unknown, I would say. Where, the the reality of it, shall we say, is it true, the ontology of UFOs? And I think people have looked into that. I think Sean Esbjörn Hagens is one of those people who has who have looked into it and written about the ontology of UAPs, UFOs. I haven't looked into that much myself, but so there are people doing. There are a lot of people who are not into spirituality at all, but are very much into the phenomenon of UFOs, UAPs. And people go on, out in the desert and sit and meditate. There are these, trying to get into first contact with or some form of I don't remember which is which, the fifth kind, the fourth kind, whatever, getting into actual contact or seeing them, and maybe even having these connections. And then there are these stories about, was it in Zambia or somewhere? I think Jack Villar, I don't remember his name correctly, speaking to this, that there has been, a landing, and the beings there walked out and spoke to, a group of children, and the children afterwards draw pictures and told the same story, which is really hard to get a lot of children to do. I mean, you can conjure it up for sure, but it's it's a remarkable trait. And many years later, they met up again, and they, you know, it was still true for them. So I think the question about if people are having real experiences, real in terms of, not making it up, that's unquestionable. It is obviously true that they are having these experiences. The ontology of it, though, is hard to understand. And I think one way of conceptualizing it or thinking about it is to think about it as a just like Jack Villeneuve, whatever his name is, in terms of interdimensional beings or beings of the subtle realm. So an easy way of categorizing it is just like the traditions do. They speak about a gross physical realm or consciousness or state of being, which we are in right now. So we are in the physical gross state, as they call it. Gross, not in terms of being, disgusting, but gross like in physicality. And there seem to be very few of these beings there, shall we say. Just like ghosts, it's the same story there. There are tons of people running around on YouTube, or running around in haunted houses rather, and filming it and putting it up on YouTube. Uh, and it's the same story there. They have these experiences. Some are obviously fake, or most of them maybe, but some of them seems to be somewhat reasonable or true. They at least seem to have some genuine experiences of ghosts or paranormal phenomena, shall we say, which is just as the UFO phenomena mostly is pretty easy to debunk, as it were, but some isn't. Some is harder, and and definitely, running around in the haunted house, most people will have weird experiences there. It's the whole, placebo and those kinds of psychological mechanisms. You can make people think things. We did as children. Going into the bathroom, looking in the dark, looking into a mirror, and believing you see something. And when you really go for it, these things happen more, and it seems like you have these paranormal experiences, whereas most of the time you're probably not. But again, there are people who are both adults and children who see beings of this kind, third kind, all the time. They see, it could be aliens, UFOs, UAPs. It can be different spiritual beings. They can see fairies, angels. I mean, it's why are they so reoccurring in the spiritual traditions? Why are there always these both gods and demons in these traditions? What are what are they? Are they just fantasies, or are they real? And the way some of the traditions explain it is just what I was previously referring to, in terms of being a part of the subtle realm. And the subtle realm, as opposed to the gross physical realm, is another type of realm usually associated with the dream state. So in the dream state, we can experience those types of things for sure. It's not uncommon for people in dreams to have encounters of different beings, even being a different being, and also maybe on psychedelics too, having interactions with um, what was it? Terence McKenna used to speak about this. I was going to say the electric sheep, but that's Stanley. No, Stanley is not Philip K. Dick. Do androids dream of electric sheep? I don't remember what it is, but definitely encounters with beings, different types of beings, and it seems real. It also seems like they are talking to themselves, when they recount it, because one of the things that Terence McKenna, I think, tried to do was get information out of them, which would prove their existence, because they were speaking about, things related to the physical world, and if he was able to get information that he could not, if they are, smarter than we are, for example, maybe they could tell him something of importance. But it turned out I don't think they did. And this is also an argument against it, against they being something, I don't know, real, maybe even. So, just as in a dream, if we in a dream get in contact with a being, the being could be, a great angel or something, telling us, you are the light of the world. I'm here for you. I am the love that you seek, and these spiritual things. They're not really telling you anything out of the ordinary. It's just, or maybe out of the ordinary, but not something that would prove their existence. It's common for everyone has heard those things, so it's nothing new or nothing novel with it. And when we think about dreams, we think that it's our own, at least in from a, again, intellectual Western materialistic point of view, our dreams are conjured within our own minds, within our brain are basically projecting a world and those beings within it. So it is literally us talking to ourselves in that dream. And even though it seems like it isn't. So it's pretty easy to make the argument that those kinds of entities that people experience in, visions, psychedelic visions, or visions without those things, visions that spiritual saints or just people, normal, regular people like you and me, have had throughout the ages. Has the burning bush and other things. They are visions, and they may only occur in our own mind and maybe not in the actual physical realm. Almost like I start to think about augmented reality, which is incoming. Maybe it will take over virtual reality. So augmented reality is we look at the world and we put on our some goggles, for example, and then we can, on top of the normal physical world, we get other stuff. Basically, we can have other people there. We can interact with objects and things that are not really in that world, but are only projected in our goggles, but we see them and they appear real to us. And in some ways, we can get in contact with the subtle realm in which these beings and other types of stuff occur too. For example, spiritual energies. I spoke about that the other day. We have spiritual energies, healing energies, maybe, or not healing energies. Bad vibes coming our way. Reiki, chi, prana, kundalini, those kinds of energies are not measurable either. Just like, all paranormal phenomena, basically. This is the thing. It's a great divide between paranormal phenomena actually existing or just being a figment of imagination or something like that. It is interesting though, because has been so prevalent throughout the world, and so many people find it to be truly meaningful, not just the idea of a god in the sky, but actually experience it firsthand in these visions and creating whole religions out of it. And also people there are also people who are not even into spirituality who have these experiences. Children, for example, they're not, unless they are indoctrinated at an early age, they seem to experience this. And one way of explaining that is the fact that they are, quote unquote, more open. Their brains, again, are different in many ways than an adult's, and they have more of, I think at least, the brain waves typically associated with the subtle realm, actually, the dream state, which is called theta waves, and which we also get more of if we do, like I said, psychedelics, or if we do different types of spiritual practices, or if we do meditation, which is of course a spiritual practice, but I'm also thinking about shamanic drumming and singing and chanting and all those things that maybe were the swirling what I call dervishes within the Sufi tradition. We can get into states, and different states, and those are correlated with the brain states too. And within those states, we can sometimes experience different types of phenomena from the subtle realm. We can also have the experience of awakening and and maybe we can call it like deeper states of awareness. Maybe even a non-dual state, which is basically not a state. It's the stateless state. Amrutlaya's Siddharameshwar called it in his book with exactly that name, the stateless state, which is because everything is a state, right? So what you are experiencing right now is a state. So we often think about this state as the ground state or the normal state. But what the traditions say is that the state that a quote unquote normal human being is in is an altered state. It is a state in which we have an identification with a self, a small self, or an egoic self, narrative self, and we believe that we are that person, and those thoughts are ours, and awakening tells us that it's not the case. Just as when we have an awakening in a dream state or in a dream, we realize that we become lucid, and we realize we are in a dream, and obviously we are not the actual character in that dream. It just seems like it feels like it, and it's very believable, right? When we are in a dream, we believe it. And what the tradition says is that we believe it in this state too, but we can wake up from it. Just as we can become lucid in a dream, we can become lucid or awake in this normal waking state. That has nothing to do, or not nothing to do, with the spiritual beings, but the path to it seems to often, for many people, go through having those types of subtle experiences too. because we go deeper into our own consciousness, you could say. So the consciousness could be seen as the ground of being, or the absolute, or the state that goes beyond these different states. So this whole world is a sort of a state, and phenomena within that world as our identification with a separate self. And when we go deeper into it with meditation, spiritual practices and such, we can realize that that is the case, basically. And through that realization, or just going deeper, we don't even need to realize that necessarily, because, as I said again, all kinds of people have these experiences of these spiritual beings. They have visions, they have things that seem really real, even even maybe snuck in a Swedish word there, a hyper-real state. People going through near-death experiences, for example, is also like that. They go into another realm of being, which when they come back, they say that it felt even more real. People doing, again, like going through psychedelic experiences also says that sometimes that it felt even more real, or this state now felt like a dream in contrast to that, just as waking up from a dream makes, you realize that that was a dream. We wake up from this, this waking state feels like it was a dream. That's why they call it a dream, or maya, or illusion. And it seems like when we go deeper into our own consciousness, deeper into beingness, suchness, we sometimes have these experiences of energies, of different beings, and we can put our attention on it if we want to know these spiritual beings, angels. As I'm looking at my the topic for today, noticing spiritual beings, angels and demons. If we put our attention on it, and if we're actively looking for it, we may see more of it. And if that's something you're interested in, go ahead, go for it. It can be interesting, intriguing, going on, to these haunted houses. Maybe you don't want to associate with those energies or beings, but whatever floats your boat. They are real in the sense that we do experience them, or we can experience them. Ultimately, from the spiritual traditions perspective, or the mystical traditions, I would say, like I mentioned, Sufism, or shall we say Zen Buddhism, everything is like a dream. So even discussing the ontology of these beings isn't that interesting from that perspective, I think, and not for me either. It doesn't really matter if they are real or not, because everything is a projection of the mind. So everything is in a sense whatever you want to call it. You could call it an illusion. Ultimately, those are just words, but we can notice it. And I think the way to do it is either putting our attention on it and or just doing our spiritual practices, and they, for most people, to some extent, seem to occur just naturally. And I would not suggest going after it, because if you're into or after awakening, it can be helpful, and if it is, that's great. But awakening ultimately means waking up from even that, even the seeing angels or gods or different kinds of beings. They're helpful, great, just like a spiritual teacher, in a physical form can be helpful. But when you wake up from all of that.